See, and it's a good thing you weren't recording because we would have recorded you doing the thing wrong.
Yeah, we're on now though, and you should see a red thing
The
on
the
your.
red thing that you were talking about. Yeah, I see it
Yeah.
this time. So so I was supposed to be on jury duty this week. And back in November, we got I got my jury duty summons. And I had originally put in a request because there's a hardship exemption that you can put in. And I was like, I'm a small business owner. If I am at jury duty, I'm not going to make any money. So there's a hardship there that you guys are imposing upon me, and I can do this. So I go through the whole online request or the jury um, questionnaire, and it asks, do you have any reasons for an exemption? And one of the drop downs is hardship. So click hardship exemption, and then it asks you put in a request, and I say I'm a business owner. I will have financial hardship because of this. So I submit it, and then 3 days later, I get an email back from the state that says the state doesn't recognize hardship exemptions. And I was like, well, then why on earth did you put in an opportunity for me to request this if I don't even get it? So fast forward 2 weeks, and there's a death in Haley's family. And it happens to be the same week of jury duty. So now I call the juror's office and I was like, hey, last time I was trying to get out because I'm a business owner. And this time I'm going to tell you that there's a death. And as someone who used to manage attendance and absenteeism, I know exactly what this looks like. So I'm not trying to get out of jury duty, but can we push it out anymore? Because I need to go to the other side of the state for a funeral. And they're like, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. Can we push it to the second week of December? And I was like, I can't do the second week of December because that's my wife's birthday and I will die. Um, okay, well, how about we'll just push it out into the new year? Yeah, that's perfect. That gives me plenty of time. Plus, I'm busy enough at work that that gives me ample time that I can actually take time off of work and not worry about it being this last minute thing where, hey, you've got jury duty. So she tells me that the state is going through a transition of their old system to their new system. So I'll see another postcard, but it'll look different than what the original one was. So I'm supposed to have jury duty this week, and I haven't gotten any postcard whatsoever. And I have been trying to figure it out, and I've tried calling the juror's office, and it's like 15-minute hold times, and I just don't have the ability to stay on the line because it's in between haircuts and things like that. So I finally get a hold of them this Monday, which is the day that was the first of my 5 days off of work. And I waited on the line for 20 minutes. And I'm telling this guy, yeah, I was supposed to do it in November and it got pushed out to January. And he said, oh, yeah, all of the jurors who were part of the old system didn't actually transfer into the new system. So your jury summons is null and void. Your service has been accepted. Thank you. I'm like, oh, cool. You guys could have told me so I could have worked this week. Uh, because instead of my alternative was I could have taken appointments this week, but then every single night I'm calling into a line trying to figure out, okay, am I going to have to cancel an entire day's worth of appointments? And I'm booked out between 4 and 6 weeks. So it'd be calling people the morning of their appointments and telling them, hey, can't get you in for like another month. Sorry. Thank Idaho. So yeah, now I just happen to have this week off, so I'm doing my taxes and I'm doing all of the other things that nobody really wants to do, but I've found myself with time to do it.
I was when I've been summoned several times as a civilian for jury duty, but I've never once had to do the jury duty. It's always canceled at the last minute or whatever. When I was in the military, there were several times that I was on there they don't call it a jury, they call it a court martial panel, but it's the same thing. It's a jury. They call it a different
It's
thing, but it's a
military,
jury.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they basically just send you a letter and they're like, okay, you're going to be on this panel, and there's no getting out of it. That's just where you're gonna
See,
be
and
working.
this is where this is my third time, and I really, really want to do jury duty. I actually really want to experience that part of civil duty.
Yeah, it is. It's
And
a great time. I there's you
yeah,
learn a
especially when
lot.
you're getting paid for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. When you're not getting paid and the state's making you take an unpaid vacation, it's not nearly as much fun.
Yeah, that is a thing because it didn't matter to me where I worked, man. I was going to get paid no matter what.
Yeah, first time I got called in, I was stoked because I was working for a company that was going to pay me to take jury duty. So I was like, awesome, day off. And then it got canceled last minute, so it just I didn't need to be called in. And then the next time again, it was a company that was paying me to take jury duty, and I got all the way into the court, and the judge came out and said that there was new evidence that had been presented, so they needed to go back to deliberations and that our services were no longer needed. So it's like, I got that close. And I kept hoping beyond hope that, the Brian Kohlberger case, the guy who allegedly killed 4 kids in northern Idaho, he's in need of a jury. And I was like, it's lining up in the perfect amount of time. Maybe I could get on this case that I know nothing about. But
Yeah, there's it's so funny. I was at my catechism class last night, and uh, there's, they were just talking about something, and it brought up in my mind anyway, the recent pardoning of almost all of the
of the
federal
death
death
row
row
inmates,
inmates. Yeah, and so the Catholic Church's position is pretty clear. I mean, it's very clear. They think that um, the death penalty is wrong, and nobody should be put to death for their crimes. And there's a couple reasons for it. One, they maintain that the human dignity isn't contingent upon human behavior. So a person, no matter how serious their crime is, they're still valued as a full human being. Um, and then the other is, the chance of a redemption. So there's the deathbed confession kind of a thing. So they think that it's wrong for the state to take away that chance for for redemption. So anyway, that's what we were talking about at this catechism class. And I'm like, you know what? I got a problem with this because the dignity that I think of is the dignity of the victim in this crime. You know, and
who
there's
wasn't given a choice.
that's exactly right. They didn't get the guy wasn't like, hey, do you want to? Maybe they were, but I think that's probably the minority of cases where the murderer's like, would you like to make any deathbed confessions or anything like that? I think
Yeah.
they just they just kill him anyway. And I'm like, uh um so the I just have a real problem because it seems to me that victims just get overlooked. They're like, okay, well, there's a victim in this crime. And there's the person who is killed who no longer gets to live, but there's also that person's spouse, their everybody in their family, their mother, their brothers, their aunties and uncles, all those folks who just next Thanksgiving they're all going to be looking at that empty chair at the table, and and yeah, so that was my contribution to the catechistic dialogue was I got a problem with this.
I think that this is probably a good opportunity to talk about what this whole conversation series is going to be about. So this is the Supper Talk podcast, and this is actually our Mulligan episode. We were supposed to get our first episode recorded on the day of the vice presidential debate, which the day after that was actually the day that Iran had bombed Israel. And we had this amazing conversation and really, really fantastic conversation that didn't happen past us because I got a computer update and it killed my computer. So I've been without any kind of technology for the last few months for us to be able to continue with the progress of what the Supper Talk podcast was supposed to be about. But ideally, what the Supper Talk podcast is supposed to be is there's a lot of people in the United States nowadays that are having a real issue with just sitting down at dinner and having a conversation with family members that could potentially be across the aisle from them. And both my dad and I think that this is something that we can set a good example for other people. And we kind of represent a lot of what the issues that people talk about are. My dad's a baby boomer and I'm a millennial. My dad is much more conservative than I am, and we have very different political ideology. But that doesn't stop us from talking, and that doesn't stop us from getting to know one another, because we actually do believe that a lot of the ways that you can grow your relationships with one another is by diving into what makes you different and what the different life experiences that individuals have had can help create a more robust view on the world. And largely, we believe that a lot of Americans and young people in general have missed out on this ability to communicate effectively with people on the opposite aisle. So we wanted to be an example for you guys and be able to talk about real life events that are going on as they're happening and just navigate through the conflict of conversation and be able to get some of your opinions maybe down in the comments section below as you guys subscribe to this channel and be able to show us love as we grow too. But I'm gonna get you introduced over to my dad, and this is Steve. So, Steve, go ahead and tell a little bit about what your history is that brought you to the Supper Talk.
Yeah, so you just said my name. I'm Steve. I'm Chris's dad. I'm a little bit unique in that I'm a 60-year-old grad student. So I'm
He's a
in
boomer snowflake, is what he just said.
Yeah. So I'm in a graduate program at a seminary, a divinity school. I'm earning a master's of divinity in pastoral counseling. So an MDiv, a master's of divinity, is just like a master's of arts or a master's of science or any other kind of a master's degree. In that you can specialize. Some people specialize in one thing, people specialize in another. I'm specializing in pastoral counseling. My real academic interest, though, is in developmental psychology, particularly human identity, how people develop their own unique sense of self, their own personality. So that's the academic side of me. My experience and my expertise really comes from I've got 30 years of government experience in war fighting and counterterrorism. So my warfighting experience was I was 20 years in the Army. I was an infantry guy. I served in the 75th Ranger Regiment. I fought with the Ranger Regiment. I was a long range surveillance guy. I've got operational expertise in Arctic operations. We lived in Alaska for a while. Mountain operations. We lived in the mountains of North Georgia. I was a mountaineering instructor for the U.S. Army Ranger School. And jungle operations. We lived in Hawaii, and there's a jungle training school there in Hawaii. So, and I've spent time in Honduras. I spent time in Panama. So I've got a wide range of war-fighting experience in a lot of different circumstances. And then my counterterrorism experience really started after September 11th. My retirement from the Army was approved in August of 2001. So 1 month after I started out processing from the Army, um, September 11th happened. And I was like, man, I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a friend who called me up and said, hey, the government's starting up a new federal agency, which now is known as the Transportation Security Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. Um, they said, hey, you might want to get involved in this. So while I was still on active duty, I started working um, in an operations officer role, and I spent all of 2002 planning and conducting the federalization of airports all across the country. Um, and then I continued in that operations officer role for probably about 4 years, and then I transitioned into a program analyst role, um, which which just had me managing national level programs that deal with um, homeland security and specifically counterterrorism. So I think I have what I would consider to be expertise in intelligence analysis, in counterterrorism. I think I've got really good expertise with regard to physical security and risk management. So if there was a business who was like, "Hey, I want to, minimize my risk of an active shooter," or how do I minimize my risk of a cyber attack or something like that, I think I've got pretty good expertise in that area, and I can be useful. And then on the again, I'm in seminary, so I think I've got a pretty good expertise. There are people who are much more expert in a lot of these areas, but not just religion, but metaphysical philosophy. Because you've got to kind of have a worldview that religion can fit into. So how things are made, what is substance, what is material, what is immaterial, all that kind of stuff. And I think I've got a pretty good understanding of mental health, not mental illness. I understand a little bit about mental illness, but that's just from personal experience. I don't have any clinical expertise, but I do have pretty good experience in helping people maintain mental health and cultural anthropology, how humans interact with one another in cultures. So that's me. And I live in Boulder, Colorado, and that's me in a nutshell.
So that's the guy who raised me. Um, for context of who it is that I am, I'm Chris, and I live in Boise, Idaho. I largely look at my upbringing as I was raised by an Army Ranger slash instructor for the Army Rangers and had a lot of the Army Ranger credo, Army Rangers lead the way, kind of as a role model for my upbringing. In fifth grade, my parents took me out of school and I was homeschooled from sixth grade until I graduated with a faith-based homeschool education, which was kind of convenient because we were moving around so much with what it was that my dad did that it helped me be able to do school even through the moves. So we went from Georgia to Germany to Georgia to Alaska to Georgia to Hawaii. And then when my dad finally retired in Hawaii, he had made an agreement with my mom that he would settle down close to where her family was, and her family was all in Idaho. So in 2002, our family picked up and moved to Boise. And I have spent my entire adult life in Idaho without necessarily having a lot of direction because being homeschooled, I didn't have guidance counselors. I didn't have people saying, hey, you excel in this or you excel in that. So a lot of my life was really just trying to figure things out. And I would be in one position at work and I would get bored. So I'd teach myself something new and I'd get a promotion. And then I would teach myself something new and then I'd get a promotion. And then I'd teach myself something new and then I'd get a promotion. And that was kind of the lesson that my dad had always taught me growing up is if there's anything that you want to learn, you just need to go out and teach yourself how to do it. You don't need somebody telling you that you need to learn something. You just need to have an interest. And that was a core part of our education as being homeschooled is you can learn whatever you want to learn. So I took that skill set into the workforce and I wound up doing staffing analytics. And then I was in resource management. And then I was in human resources. And then I was in project management. And then I was in team management. And one of the things that growing up, my dad always said is you're always going to be a leader. You're never going to be a manager. You're never going to tell people what to do. You're going to show people what it is that they need to do by putting a flashlight between your ass and you're going to show them how to do it. And leadership mentality was always something that I was really, really raised around because it was a necessity in what it was that was my dad. So a lot of those skill sets really transferred over into the corporate world where I excelled and I was doing people management and eventually I became an interim operations manager for the contact center that managed the Affordable Care Act when that first launched. But after about 10 years of working in a career without any real direction, I was getting really depressed. And I got to a point where I was planning just parking my car in the garage and leaving it on. And then one day I was on the phone with my mom, and she told me that Robin Williams had killed himself. And that day was the day that I realized I need to make a change and I need to get a hold of these issues that I had going on in my head because if this guy who brought so many people so much joy can't figure it out, I'm fucked. Um, so that was the beginning of what started the process of me going through reverse elimination of choosing a new career. You know, I don't like doing this. I don't like doing that. I hate doing this. I hate doing that. I have a good skill set in this and I have a good skill set in that. What kind of opportunities are out there that are growing industries that I could also find successes for myself? How do I define success? And really the things that I defined success as was I wanted to be on my feet and I wanted to actually be moving all day. I wanted to do something with my hands and say that I started with something unrefined and it's finished because of me. And I wanted to work with people and I wanted to have real relationships with people. These are the only three things that I determined success to be. And out of that, I wanted to either be a photographer or I wanted to get into cutting hair. And I opted against photography because everybody knows a photographer. And it's just too much competition, but hair seemed like something I could do. So I quit my job and went to school to become a barber. And 3 years after graduating, I opened up my own barber shop in Boise, Idaho called The Barber Story. And we were award-winning barber shop for the first 3 years that we opened up. And now I do photography on the side as well. So because I am in this world of photography and talking to people all day long, and being a barber, you never get to know who the person is that's sitting in your chair. You kind of have to get good with conversation. You need to be able to learn how to navigate a lot of those conflicts that you don't necessarily know what will arise. And especially in, bastard stepchild cities like Boise, Idaho, which has a very strong progressive movement in a very largely conservative state, you really don't know if you're going to be talking to somebody who is woke as the day is long or is a MAGA supporter. It could be either one, and you need to know how to be able to communicate with these people. So, Supper Talk podcast came into birthing because my dad and I are different enough that we can have these conversations. So that is the two of us. So did you see the headline about an hour ago that Israel and Hamas just signed the ceasefire agreement?
Yeah, that's a potentially it's a big deal, and I think
Yeah. I
Uh,
honestly wasn't expecting it until after Monday.
yeah, and there's the current hubbub is that it'll go into effect on the 19th of January, which is hilarious, I think, because
Because we won't be
uh,
able to talk about it on TikTok.
oh no, there's it's the day before the inauguration, and President Biden jumped on TV and he's like, "Hey, we've been working on this for months." But the fact of the matter is, uh, you know, that war has done nothing but grow and grow and grow and grow.
Yeah.
And the current administration, the Biden administration's approach to foreign policy, and that is just another example of foreign policy, um, has really fomented that war. And it was not just Trump's rhetoric saying, "Hey, you better get this done," but he hired an envoy to, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's basically a real estate negotiator, very similar to Donald Trump. And Trump's negotiator has been going back and forth between Israel and Mar-a-Lago uh, for ever since the election, about 2 weeks after the election was over. Um, so this is clearly a result of the, and you can't say the Trump administration because the administration hasn't even
No,
started
it's
yet.
it's literally just the networking capabilities of him.
Yeah, yeah,
And this is one of the like, do I like him? No. Like, and very much out of the gate, I'm not a fan of him. But I will acknowledge things that are very plain to see, and where paying attention to politics since you had me start watching in '96 during like the Clinton deposition. The thing that I've really noticed about Trump specifically since 2020 is even not being in office, he's still been very active in Washington. And you didn't see that with Obama. You didn't see that with Clinton. You didn't see that with Bush. Like as soon as their time was up, they're gone. They wanted nothing to do with it. But Trump kept up with all of his networking, regardless of whether or not the media reporting on it was positive or negative. So there's a lot of times that he was talking to Putin. There's a lot of times that he's talking to Netanyahu. There's a lot of times that he's talking to Merkel. And it's like he never stopped doing that.
yeah. And I mean, I'll use the Greenland circumstance as another example of that because everybody's laughing. They're like, he says he's going to take over Greenland. But if you take and just Google for an Arctic Circle map and look at the world from the top.
Yeah, if you're
uh,
looking at the distance between Russia and the United States and what the big barrier in between those potential missile strikes are, it's Greenland. It's a big goalie.
yeah, and it hasn't been an issue up until this point because the Arctic Ocean is a huge ocean, but it freezes so much it really hasn't been navigable. If you look, there's all these pictures of, like submarines who go underneath the Arctic ice cap and then they'll break through. So there's, but now that, everyone's like, oh, well, if you're a climate change denier, it's just, what are you going to do about climate change? So the
Well,
climate is changing.
and this is one of the things I was watching Vice News a couple years ago, and they'd sent a correspondent out to Russia, and they were talking about climate change out there, and the difference in the sentiment that all the people being interviewed is yeah, we're embracing it. We know that it's happening, and that's going to be a good thing for us. And they started talking about how economically it's actually going to be a huge bolster to Russia because right now Russia has to circumnavigate throughout all of the continents. But if you clear up the Arctic shelf, they can have exports and have shipping lanes all over the world with ease if the climate change continues on the progress that most people are agreeing that it is.
Yeah, and that's been happening. So there's the Arctic shipping lanes are open now, and they're going to get more navigable every year, and that really does the global warming as far as the Arctic provides us with two opportunities. One is new shipping lanes, but the other is there is a lot of oil and natural gas reserves.
A lot of
that
rare earth minerals too that we're going to need if we're trying to power AI.
Yeah, and we haven't been able to get there because of the ice. So now that the ice is going away, all of a sudden there's new oil possibilities. And the challenge for the United States is the only land that we have that's connected to the Arctic Ocean is the North Slope of Alaska. So if you add Greenland to the U.S. mix, that effectively doubles the amount of land surface that we have facing the Arctic Ocean. And the talk of Canada, if Canada is added to that as well, then we are comparable. Then it's an equal parity between the U.S. and Russia in terms of access to the Arctic Ocean.
I
So
don't
yeah, it's
see I don't see the and here's like I hate listening to his rhetoric because so many people take it so literally, and it that's the headache of all of it. I can understand the rhetoric of Greenland, and I legitimately can, because I think it'd be the same kind of purchase we made with Alaska, where it's just kind of it's a strategic purpose that doesn't really require us to put a lot of people there for us to have a lot of resources out of it. Um, Canada, I don't see us really having any value out of the Northwest Territories, or the Northern Territories rather, because the Northern Territories, there is nothing we'd be able to do up there. So the idea of having shipping lanes up there doesn't make any sense to me. And the idea of having in Greenland is enough of a contained space with enough of a landmass that can actually be constructed upon and civilized upon, that it makes sense that the distance from the shoreline to where you would be processing everything is reasonable. But the Northern Territories are so challenging from building an infrastructure around it that I just don't actually see Canada being a feasible option. And isn't he the one that got us out of NAFTA? So how would NAFTA as states be any different?
Yeah, I think a lot of Trump's rhetoric is starting a negotiation. So he expects people to negotiate back. He's a real estate guy, so he's like, hey, I'll give you $5 for this thing that's worth 50, and he knows he's not going to get it for $5, but maybe if he only offers 5, he might get it for 15, right? So that's kind of the deal. Now, I think Canada's got a few really important opportunities. One, they're a member of NATO, but they are a member of NATO that spends very, very little on their national defense. So there's uh, the 2% target, and they're way underneath that. They just don't spend very much on their defense at all. So increasing their defense spending and putting that defense spending up north in those territories that you're talking about would be very, very beneficial to both Canada and the United States. And I think the way that would kind of look is very similar to the North Slope of Alaska. Yeah, I mean, once you leave Fairbanks and you're driving north, there's like nothing, literally
Yeah, not until like
nothing.
Barrow.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
until you get up to, and then when you get up there, the only thing that's up there is
it's oil.
oil
Yeah.
platforms, oil rigs, yeah, all that stuff. So that's what I think would be really, really useful, because then what the shipping lanes do is you put camps, just like the North Slope. You put camps where in proximity to the oil. You pump the oil out of the ground, and then you put it on tankers there, and then the tankers use those Arctic shipping lanes to take it to and that opens up the rest of the ocean. So wherever the refining capacity is, I mean, you could literally just go down either the Pacific or the Atlantic to take it to Texas. If we were to open up some refining capacity in Seattle or anywhere in Washington or Oregon, we could extract that oil from those areas and get it to market very, very easily. So and that's what the competition with Russia is going to be. The only other countries besides the US, Canada, Greenland, and Russia that have access to the Arctic Ocean is Finland and Norway.
And Norway is who has financial guardianship over Greenland right now, right?
No, that's Denmark.
Does Denmark?
Does.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how would something like this go about? Would we just pay X amount to Denmark, and Denmark could feasibly just give us the land?
There's a few ways that it could work. That would be one way. I don't think that'd be a very. I think that would.
It seems too straightforward.
And it would create a lot of problems because we're pretending like the people of Greenland don't exist, right? We're only talking with the Kingdom of Denmark, who now claims ownership.
Yeah, it's
over
the colonizers negotiating with the other colonizers.
That's exactly right.
Pay attention, right?
So another way of doing that would be a two-step thing where Greenland becomes an independent nation from Denmark. And then as an independent nation, they could either negotiate a treaty with the United States that allows us to put defense and economic resources. So basically, we can put oil ports and defense bases, military bases in Greenland more than, and that's not really during the Cold War. I mean, there is literally tons of U.S. military equipment just in storage on ice in Greenland, because we used to have all kinds of stuff up there during the Cold War, but we just kind of left it. And and that's why Trump sees that as an opportunity. He's like, well, wait a minute, we were there. Why did we leave? And the reason we left is because we were like, well, there's nothing up there except for frozen wasteland. But that frozen
because we
wasteland,
didn't have the technology to be able to find the value in it.
And we didn't ever envision an Arctic Ocean that you could regularly and reliably navigate. But now we have an Arctic Ocean that you can regularly and reliably navigate, and that opens up all these oil and natural gas, and then on the island of Greenland, mineral resources. So it's and so there's so that would put Greenland in charge of Greenland with a strong relationship with the United States. Now, the other thing they could do is Greenland could get independence from Denmark, and then the people of Greenland could vote to become a U.S. territory. And there's, that could be, so like if we were to give there's only 45,000 people that live on Greenland. Greenland is like it's so funny because Greenland is ice and Iceland is green, right? So we could give $1 million to every single resident of Greenland and still only spend a third of what we've spent so far in Ukraine, and we've got nothing for what we've spent in Ukraine, and we could spend a third
We
of
could
that.
have all of Greenland.
We could have all of Greenland to be an American territory, just like Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam. There's a and then we wouldn't have to negotiate with the people of Greenland. Greenland would be part of the United States, but I don't think it would be a state. I think it would just depend perhaps on a little bit of negotiation and the demographics of it, because adding states has always been a political business in the United States.
We've talked about this before, because that's one of the reasons why we haven't moved like Puerto Rico or Cuba over, is because they would lean traditionally more progressive, so it would skew the balance of what the politics is. So I remember one of the things that you had said is, if you were to bring the two of them over, then split California up into 4 different territories, 3 of which being conservative, 1 of which being that which is probably on fire right now. And then you would wind up having this balance of 3 new progressive and 3 new conservative areas. So that way, overall, the union is still balanced.
Yeah, and our system is designed to require compromise. So if you think you're going to like just get one thing that's going to be really, really good for one perspective, that's not going to happen in the United States. You've got to, if you want to do something really big like that, you've got to get enough people on board from a wide array of the United States. And because it's not just the political parties are so divided, the people of the United States are divided, and we always have been. I mean, it's no different than the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists at the time of the American Revolution. People had very different views about what this new nation should be like way back then, and we still have very, very different views on what the federal government should be, what the role of states are. That all those things have always been points of contention in the U.S., which is why our system requires so much compromise. And the Senate is literally designed to stop things from happening, unless you can get, a political compromise. The whole reason for the filibuster, whole reason for, that's the way things work in the U.S. by design.
I think that that's actually a really good stopping point for this first episode, is focusing on that we need to have compromise, and it needs to be middle ground in order for there to actually be any movement forward.
Yeah.
So I think that, we can call it from here. And now that we have this momentum going, we don't have to do, an additional mulligan first episode. And maybe, sometime in the future, we'll release that first episode as a bonus episode, like a year in, once we've grown enough. But in the meantime, if you guys have just started following us on the YouTubes or Spotify's or wherever it is that we're posting this to, probably not on TikTok, because that's not going to be here on Sunday, then I appreciate it. If you can give my dad and I a follow, we would love that. If you want to give us some of your opinions and put those down in the comments below, that would be fantastic. Maybe we'll even talk about some of the things that you bring up next time. Who knows? But thanks for coming to the Supper Talk. We hope you guys have a great day.
Take care, y'all. Bye.
Bye.